If the YouTube algorithm has figured out that you like Regular Show, which is pretty likely if you found your way to this video, then you have more than likely been shown this clip of Benson cry screaming at Mordecai and Rigby at least a dozen times. But what you might not know is that this clip comes from Busted Cart, one of the best episodes in the entire show, and that the scenes before and after this moment make it one of the most impactful in the series, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. In this video, we're going to go through the episode leading up to Benson's emotional breakdown, the immediate aftermath, and discuss what it shows about the dynamic between Mordecai, Rigby, and their boss.
I need to take my last bathroom break as an employed man.
The episode starts off with the classic Mordecai and Rigby get caught by Benson scene that the show loves to open up with, but with a twist that sets the tone for the rest of the episode. Before Benson can start to yell at his employees about the titular busting of the cart, he begins to get scolded by his own boss, Maillard. The pair's discussion works to establish the idea that Benson is actually a pretty lax boss in the viewers' heads before getting to the rest of the episode, which encourages the viewer to feel bad for what he has to go through throughout the rest of the 11 minutes as he tries to hold on to his job. Benson being the only park worker to hold such immense pride in their position is something that the series touches on pretty frequently, but it's most on display here as he seems genuinely terrified by Maillard even mentioning the word fire during their meeting. I love the shot of Mordecai and Rigby being shocked how Benson is getting talked to, showing just how used they are to having a boss that'll pretty much let them get away with anything. Anyway, Maillard sets up very well the simplest kind of plot, being that Benson has to get to point X, being the golf cart dealership, before event Y, being the expiration of the cart's warranty. This kind of plot really works well with this kind of episode, as it allows the jokes and the character development to fill up the 11 minutes, as the interior of the car works in a bottle episode kind of way for the middle section of the episode, as the dialogue is the only thing in focus. The hilariously atmospheric part of Benson's drive before Mordecai and Rigby show up is excellent, and the amount of fear in Benson knowing just what shenanigans his employees bring with them is done really well here too. After the terrific DUI test joke, we get the first moment of the episode that I would say is less than 75% joke, as Rigby asks,
Benson, why do you hate us so much?
Benson responds in the classic parent way, explaining to the pair that he hates their actions and not their person, which sets up a really interesting topic to think about while the funniest scene of the episode with the trio listening to electropop plays in the background. As this scene shows, Benson acts as a friend to Mordecai and Rigby in a good chunk of episodes, and the boss-employee dynamic frequently falls to the wayside for a fun side adventure, which brings into question how he's supposed to be able to treat them when they are on the job, a job he cares about deeply and that they don't take seriously in the slightest. This disparity illustrates itself, as soon as Benson trusts the guys enough to take the wheel for a little bit, they pit stop at an arcade, spend all night playing, and leave Benson to wake up to the realization that their chances of making it to the dealership are all but zero, and that subsequently his chances of keeping his job are all but zero. And it's this realization that causes Benson to have the freak out that I alluded to at the beginning of this video, as he pretty much sums up the series in a couple of sentences, which I'm going to attempt to play in the least chopped up form possible that copyright won't kill me over.
Hours! You were in there for hours! Now we're never gonna make it to the dealership in time! Excuses! Excuses! How am I supposed to trust you when all you give me are excuses? When are you two gonna learn that your actions have consequences? Consequences that affect other people, like me! You may not care about keeping your jobs, but I care about keeping mine! I'm about to lose my job! If I lose my job, I have nothing! I have nothing!
Despite its status as one of the network's most comedy-focused series, Regular Show is quite the thematic show, with one of the main themes of the series being having to face the consequences of your shenanigans, which is pretty much the thematic undertone of every episode in the series, and especially the movie. And in this emotional rant, Benson highlights exactly that, as Rigby and Mordecai, despite never having any negative intentions in this episode, continue to act selfishly in a way that, while relatively non-risky for them, as their worst-case scenario is losing their landscaping gig, could be extremely devastating for somebody else, as it could lead to Benson losing everything. As pretty thoroughly established in the series, Benson doesn't exactly have very many friends, so his career at the park is really the only thing in his life that he takes pride in, so when Mordecai and Rigby decide to mess around with it so that they can play in an arcade, they are playing with his entire life, which obviously hits hard for Benson. For a single moment, he decided to trust his employees, and they've once again let him down. Sam Marin's voice acting elevates nearly every episode of the show, but this is definitely some of his best work in the series. The amount of anger at both his employees and himself for letting this happen is brought about really well both visually and sonically, and the lack of music behind the scene works to establish the tone shift the episode is going for in this moment, and to highlight the tone shift within this moment as Benson goes from anger to grief in a matter of seconds as he realizes that his one source of pride in his life has been taken by Mordecai and Rigby. Except that it hasn't, as the rest of the episode plays out exactly how you would expect, with Mordecai and Rigby saving the day and getting to the dealership in the nick of time by going on the most dangerous road in the country, a scene with some choreography that's as per usual way too good, only to end up totaling Benson's truck in the process, finishing the episode by focusing on the cyclical nature of the events in the episode, as this is far from the last time that Benson will trust Mordecai and Rigby, and even further from the last time that the pair will goof off and mess something up.
When does the warranty on the truck expire? Road trip!
Well, it's become a very common take in regular show discourse to say that Benson is usually the one on the right, which is pretty clearly true if you look at the series with a non-cartoony lens. I think this episode shows something else in Benson that's really interesting, which is the conflict within the character of genuinely wanting to be a good boss and also wanting to be a good park manager. Benson doesn't want the guys to view him in the way that he views Maillard, instead wanting them to see him as a reasonable leader, which obviously doesn't go very well when he tries to deal with his not so motivated employees. You can see this in the fact that Benson doesn't try to throw Mordecai and Rigby under the bus as soon as the crash happens from the beginning of the episode, as even though he knows that making a big display and firing them will likely help his optics in the eyes of the boss, he still tries to maneuver through the situation without getting them involved. It's his desire to want to be seen as a good boss that causes his reaction to Rigby's question about why he hates them, as the idea that he truly hates them and not just their shenanigans hits him pretty hard. While this accusation does cause Benson to correct his behavior that was likely bordering on being a bit too harsh in the car, he overcorrects, which results in him handing too much trust over to Mordecai and Rigby, who of course jack it up. And in the breakdown that follows, Benson realizes that in trying to shift between being a good boss and being a good park manager, he's failed at both and lost his opportunity to be both, causing his anger to quickly shift to grief. This scene fully highlights the series-long struggle of Benson to try and remain a good boss while also being a good friend, and while he never quite reaches a perfect homeostasis between the two, he does improve throughout the series, as by the time they get to space, and Mordecai and Rigby are barely even employees anymore, their relationship is pretty stable. While throughout many episodes in the series, Benson is simply an obstacle that the guys have to overcome, it's episodes like Busted Cart and moments like his breakdown in the episode that make him into one of the most interesting characters in a series that's full of interesting characters. Anyway, that's gonna be about it for me. I know this video is a little bit different than a typical one on this channel and a little bit shorter too, so I hope that it was still a somewhat enjoyable watch. If you want to tell me otherwise, you can find my Twitter in the description, where you can also just happen to see what I'm working on next. Either way, this has been AmpleSamuel, and I'll see you in about a week with yet another video about a cartoon that ended literal years ago. Thanks for watching.